Hey guys, what's up? This is Shao Style. Got another video here for you guys, and this is a video kind of been wanted to do for the longest time. So one of my buddies here from the film group First Saturday Productions, they're all my friends. We're a group of friends that, well, mainly them. They got together and they basically, start a production team. Making music videos or commercials or whatever. And when I'm available, I'm really happy to help them and stuff like that. So please make sure to go check out their page. The link should be in the description. Now, one of my buddies from this group, he saw the video of like the build that Paul Helmy. The thing is that he basically followed just about every part and specifications of that build after watching it. So he created a computer based off my computer, and I was actually pretty happy that he did that. However, I was thinking about it, and now one thing I noticed is in my case, I wanted to be able to edit in 4K. Now, I did search a lot of videos on how to edit on what would be a good PC to edit in 4K, right? And there are good results. Like, people telling you, "Oh, this is my editing PC for $1,000 and whatnot." But the problem that I noticed about these videos is that they never explain to you why they are getting the parts that they are getting, and I felt that's kind of annoying because I want to understand what is happening with the computer when you put it together, right? I mean, yeah, you do need certain components to make it work. That makes sense, right? But considering there's a vast amount of computer components out there, and variables and speed rates and all this other shit, and it can be overwhelming to pick what you need. And people, they just say, "Oh, this is what I got for $2,000." And the thing is, depending on what you do, you may not need to build a PC for $2,000, right? The reason why I decided on the parts that I decided for my computer is because there was something specific that I needed, and that's basically what I'm going to be doing. I'm probably going to do one video per component of the PC. So for starters, in this video, I want to talk about the GPU. Now, before I go into talking about my graphics cards, be sure to check out Pause Hardware's video. I'll have the link in the description about how to choose the best graphics card for you. And basically, he talks about the distinctions between the graphics cards, between the 1070, the 1060, and so on. Right? He's able to explain this stuff better than I ever will. I'm basically talking about what I know and what worked for me. So if you're trying to build your computer and you're like me that doesn't know much about this kind of shit, then this will definitely may help you out, I hope. For starters, depending on the current generation of graphic cards that are available, invite you to go with that, right? Because obviously technology keeps advancing, and pretty much the technology that goes into graphics cards, they advance. So if you're building a computer, it makes sense to go with a current generation of parts, right? However, just because it's new doesn't mean it has to be expensive, right? So there are a good options of graphics cards for you to choose from. However, the main thing that defines one graphics card from another is the amount of VRAM, CUDA cores, and then the clock speeds, right? However, those are the three things that, from my understanding, are pretty important in deciding what card is good for you. Now, the reason why I decided to go for the GTX 1070 card is mainly because me personally, in this case, I didn't want to spend nothing more than $500. The reason being is because I think paying anything more than $500 can be a total fucking ripoff. Because considering how technology keeps advancing, you kind of buy something within 2 or 3 fucking months, something else is gonna come out that you're gonna be like, "Oh, I should have waited," and then it just goes on and on and on, and fuck all that. So I mean, I'm pretty happy with my 1070, and I'm very sure once the time comes I need to upgrade, or maybe my graphics cards burns out or something, I'll be able to get something that's underneath the 500 dollar range, and it'll be just as good, if not most likely better, by the time I need to buy a new graphics card, right? So set a budget on how much you want to spend per computer part, right? Because once you start getting all the computer parts together, it's gonna start adding up, and shit can get expensive pretty fast, right? Now, the main reason why I went for the 1070 is mainly because I wanted the 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I can see here it says 8 gigabytes. Then underneath the 1070, it goes down to 6, and then to 4 gigabytes, and then down to 2 gigabytes. Me personally, I would not feel comfortable going underneath 4 gigabytes. If I was to choose a card that had a minimum amount of gigabytes of VRAM, the minimum would be 4 gigabytes for me, right? Mainly because I like to use After Effects and all that stuff, and I'll get into that in a bit. 4 gigabytes should be the minimum of VRAM that you should get on a graphics card, especially if you want to get into like doing VFX stuff or After Effects or 3D modeling. And also, if you want to have like a good PC to like play video games, 4 gigabytes should be sufficient. Now, if you're able to take it up a notch, 6 gigabytes should be very good, right? But 4 gigabytes should be a minimum. Alright, so I got After Effects here open, and also I got MSI Afterburner, and pretty much I got two little graphs here going. One is basically the GPU usage, and the other one is the VRAM usage, the memory that's built inside the graphics card, right? Obviously, I got a lot of things going on. I have like my web browser open, I got the screen recorder going, I got After Effects and all this other stuff going on, so more usage of the memory is being used for my graphics card. So right now it's up to 1 gigabyte, right? Like I said, if you're gonna go for a graphics card, if you have, like in this case, if you're trying to do multiple stuff at the same time, if you have a 4 gigabyte VRAM graphics card, just before you do anything, and in my case, doing what I'm doing, there's already 1 gigabyte got used up, right? So you're gonna be left with 3 gigabytes if you have a 4 gigabyte RAM card. But in my case, I have 8 gigabytes, so I'm okay. Here is the main reason why I wanted to get a graphics card that had a sufficient amount of VRAM built into it. I love After Effects. After Effects is basically what I like to use and mainly what I prefer to work with in regards to doing VFX stuff. I wanted to be able to import 3D models into After Effects using a plugin by Video Copilot using Element 3D, right? Pretty sure if you're interested in VFX stuff, you should know Video Copilot, so no need to explain about that. So if I open up my scene setup for Element 3D, I got my character here, and here on the top it'll tell you like how much VRAM is being used, so just minimize that. I want to keep my MSI Afterburner showing, so this is an OBJ sequence, I think it's about 188, frames. So right now it's telling me I'm using about 1500 megabytes, which is 1 gigabyte and 500 megabytes, right? So let's say if I was to, use the same scene, I wanted to add something else, right? I'm just gonna like add stuff, just increase the amount of VRAM usage. Alright, so just to make things even more stupid, I got all my characters here, and I added like an oil rig. I even added like some buildings here in the background, just to add more polygons. And as you can see, my 1070 card, it's moving very well, I actually moved up to the 6800K, which is awesome, by the way. So as you can see, I'm scrolling around, and it's doing well. From what started to like 1500, it moved up to almost, let's just say 2600, 2.6 gigabytes, just to keep it simple, right? So the point I'm making is my 1070 card is definitely more than enough if you want to do something that's complex. I know that doesn't look, interesting, but I'm just saying like all the models I have and all that, and you can see how much VRAM is being used. So if you were to like get a card and you don't need that much VRAM, you probably can be good with something like the 1060 that has the 6 gigabytes of VRAM, right? So that's something to keep in mind because the 1070 costs $450. The 1060 is $299. So there's $150, price difference that you can, save for yourself, or you can use it for something else for your PC build, right? Something to keep in mind depending on what you want to do, right? And it can vary between doing, 3D stuff and, the stuff like I do in this case, making a bunch of, replicated crap. But, like I said, look at that. It works well. This is a 1080 comp, so that is to keep in mind. If I was to increase this to a 2K or even 4K, I'm pretty sure the VRAM might make a difference, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure because pretty much the thing is that depending how many polygons and how high definition your textures are, that pretty much is what gets stored into your VRAM. So in this case, pretty much, even if I was to scale this up, the amount of polygons and the quality of the texture, the resolution stays the same. So it shouldn't make that much of a difference in your VRAM, to be honest. So again, 1070, considering all the shit I have, here on the screen right now, as you can see, if you had a 6 gigabyte, VRAM graphics card, you still would have been fine. Now, another thing that people will say is that more is better, right? So in this case, the main thing is CUDA cores, right? So the 1080, it has 2,560 cores. The 1070 has 1,920 cores. 1060, 1,280. The GTX 1050 has 768. Now, if you do your research, about what is a CUDA core and whatnot, pretty much CUDA core is, I guess, equivalent to a CPU core to keep it as simple as possible. But really, like CUDA cores is basically how much information is able to be transferred inside of the graphics card simultaneously, right? So say like video games, to keep it simple, if you want to do a 4K game, obviously you need more cores to be able to process all the textures and all the good stuff at the same time. That way it's able to throw that image out to your 4K monitor, right? Paul did a video on the 1050 Ti, and as you can see here, the 1050 Ti has 4 gigabytes of VRAM. Now again, if you're not interested in doing, After Effects or any type of crazy 3D stuff, and you just want to do a 1080p, editing, something for a hobby or something to start out with, I would feel confident to say that a 1050 Ti, it has to be a Ti, will work just fine. I actually did some research before making this video to see if people have been like editing with a 1050 Ti, and actually, yeah, some people have said that they've been, editing with a 1050 Ti. Obviously, nothing past 1080, resolution. So if that's your goal, to start out with, if you have the money to build your own computer, start with a 1050 Ti. Here, as you can see, Paul, he's playing Grand Theft Auto in 1080p. He has smooth playback and he's getting 70 to 75 frames per second. And, GTA 5 is fair to assume that, it can't use up a lot of VRAM and whatnot. So, the 1050 card, I think, is pretty capable as a good starter card, using the current CUDA core technology. All right, so to end this, I'm using Adobe products. Is mainly what I use and what I'm comfortable using, right? So Adobe products tend to work better with the NVIDIA graphics cards. So not necessarily that I prefer NVIDIA over, say, AMD, but Adobe products, they tend to work better with NVIDIA because they've just been working hand in hand. iMacs, Apple products, they mainly use AMD graphic cards. So when their Final Cut Pro software, it works better using AMD, technology. So that's pretty much the thing you have to keep in mind, depending on what software you use. If you want to stick to, say Final Cut, obviously stay with iMac and using the AMD cards, because say if you were to build a PC and wanted to do a Hackintosh, so you can use Final Cut, chances are you're going to run into maybe some issues, or the render times won't be as great because, the software and the technology, the hardwares are not working together very well. Another thing to keep in mind is I came across an article saying that if you were to install Premiere Pro or After Effects on an iMac, certain filters will not work using the GPU acceleration, right? Say in After Effects, I believe it was one of them being like the fast blur effect. I think now on CC it's called Gaussian blur. From my understanding, those filters that usually are GPU accelerated with PCs, it will not be GPU accelerated using AMD card. The only main difference with that is pretty much you have to render out previews to be able to have a smooth playback on your timeline when you're using filters that are not being basically processed through the GPU, right? And another thing you want to keep in mind about CUDA core technology is if you want to use something like, say, Octane to do a GPU renders, instead of, say, for Cinema 4D, instead of using the CPU to render out an image or an animation, you can actually use the GPU CUDA core technology to render out any project that you have in Cinema 4D by using a software called Octane. The thing about Octane is that pretty much is able to detect how many CUDA cores you have built into your computer, right? So if you have multiple graphics cards, it's able to detect the CUDA cores of each of those graphics cards and pretty much, use it to render out the animation or your image, right? And you don't need to do a slide configuration with your graphics card. Now, the bad thing about using something like Octane Render is that it'll detect the lowest VRAM graphics card available, and it'll use the VRAM from that graphics card. So if you have a GPU that's 4 gigabytes and you have another GPU that's 2 gigabytes, Octane is going to use the VRAM from the graphics card that has the 2 gigabytes, which I think is kind of lame, but maybe in the future you'll be able to combine VRAM. I don't know, that'd be cool, right? But for the time being, that's how it is. So something to keep in mind. So that's pretty much, that's when you need a lot of CUDA cores, to be able to render out using CUDA core technology to render out something from Cinema 4D using a software called Octane, right? Yeah, that's basically it. I just decided to make this video on the spot, so if it sounds like I'm rambling, I basically am. So I'm doing this to kill some time, right? Hopefully you learned something and I explained myself pretty well. If not, I'll just probably delete this fucking video. But either way, I'm sure this video is long enough, so I'm going to cut it off right here. So maybe sometime in the future I'll make a video on why I decided to go for the motherboard they did, and why I choose to go for the amount of RAM memory they did and so on, just, for those that are trying to build their computer so they can understand how the software works with the computer, better. I'm still new to this, so I'm kind of excited to learn all this stuff. So hopefully me sharing this with you will help you, build a better computer or have you a better heads up on building your first computer. So that's all I got for you. And yeah, thanks for watching this video and take care. Peace.